Peace and Grand Rising. I wanted to start off first by saying that all is well in the spirit realm and on the land with regard to the Moors. All is well. We can take a breather and take some time to just breathe, because we've been going hard and heavy for since 2017, 2018. And for those who have been with us from the beginning of the journey, the ancestors are saying repeatedly, breathe, take a breather. We have to, of course, we're going to be demonstrating still continuously, because that's what we do. But the demonstrations are getting to the point where, because the foundational documents are in place, and that's the red documents and all of that, that we can start putting things on top of it that will bring even more manifestation of the vast estate to us directly, and in a way that we can all see. Because most of us, especially on this call, you wouldn't be here if you couldn't see. You would not be on this call if you could not see, because we talk about things that the normal eyes may or may not see, but the spirit realm can see it. And so the things that you're seeing in Afghanistan and Ukraine and the European Union and all of that, and I'm using those terms loosely because we know that that's just actors. The things that you're seeing is giving us a heads up to be ready. And we're ready because we put so many things in place already. The Moorish Sovereign Delarium is going to be a huge, that was actually the part that the rest of the earth was waiting for from us, is our own money put in place, put on the public record, and acknowledged properly and all of that. And it is being acknowledged properly, the way that it should be. We have some things that we still are doing in that area, but based on what Empress Chitali said before the recording started, should anything like what happened in Ukraine and everything stopping and all banking stopping and all of that, we have records and a way to bank that will be seamless and smooth. The transition will be smooth, seamless and smooth. And we won't miss a beat when it comes to commerce and everyone getting what they need and what they want. So those who have not printed out the Delarium for yourself, I would suggest that you do. Even if you don't think Delarium is quote-unquote commercially viable now, just print you some out so that you have it, the smaller bills as well as the larger bills. Print them out. And just set them to the side so that you have them ready just in case. Because I'm telling you that just in case is almost here. Okay. All rise and stand. This is a sovereign, living, ancient, Article 3, Al-Moroccan, Moorish American, court action. I am sovereign, living, justice, Pauline Denise Ritchie, in capitis Lucio Nolo, in red ink, in propria persona jure, in proprio solo, in proprio heredes. My free chosen sovereign appellation is like the jury bay, in capitis Lucio Nolo, in red ink, in propria persona jure, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. All Moors are the original indigenous, ancient, natural divine, Al-Moroccan ascendants of the great pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith, trust, allegiance, credit, and energy are hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the original indigenous, ancient empire state of Morocco. We are the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government. We are the Moorish American consulate and the Moorish American Consular Court, which is Article 3 universally. We are one peace, we are one nation, we are one government, we are the law, we are one state, we are one empire, and we are one God. We hereby exercise all sovereign rights at this time and at all points in time, pro tonque. So, the things that are going on that we're seeing is just a heads up for us, saying, if this happens here where you are today, would you be ready? That's what we're seeing. Afghanistan, Ukraine, etc., which is not the name of the lands over there. Those, you can even see in the stories where the land is being called something other than Ukraine, And so we just have to think more. If that happened today here, would we be ready? Yes, we would be. We would be. We have a way to do commerce, for commerce to continue peacefully. And we have all of the documentation in place so that if we need anything in terms of structures and things like that, that we can get those structures. There is one main piece that's pulling all of this together right now. And that one piece that I would suggest we all study and look at is appropriation. Appropriation of funds and budgets, etc. I'm going to put a link in the chat of our brothers and sisters at Barbados territory, and they are having I would say, some might say a rather boring appropriations meeting, but it's not boring when you know exactly what's really happening in this meeting. Okay? What's really happening in the meeting is they are making the case for funding to go to where it needs to go in the empire, or they're part of it. Here. Yeah, this is it right here. Okay. The link that's in the chat will give you an idea of how those of us who have things that, a vision that we see for our nation, go about getting the funding that we need. The funding will be coming from our state, and it will be circulating to our state. So we're on both ends of that. There are no foreign entities involved in that process. It happens with us, okay? It stays with us. So the appropriations piece is where if you, for example, if you are just loving on the children, on the heirs, and you see a community center for your territory for them, where they can go and they can learn and they can, as part of the building of this temple, and when I say temple, the land is the temple, and we are the temple. If you see a community center or you have a program that you want to put into effect so that the heirs can know who they are and they can enjoy finding out more about themselves, then appropriations is where you need to be looking. If you have a business that you know will assist the heirs and the future for our nation, then appropriations is where you want to be looking. And when we talk about appropriations, all we're saying is, first of all, appropriations is mentioned in the Constitution, at Article 1, you cannot access the Treasury without appropriating. That is how the Treasury is managed and governed. It's governed by appropriation. So in looking at, even if you know that you're a great motivator to the heirs, appropriations comes with that too. And all that is what do you do? And this is written by affidavit. What do you do? What is the purpose of what you do? How is it going to assist the empire and the heirs directly? And how much is that going to cost? What is going to be the allodial cost of that? And then what is it that qualifies you to do that? Now, I want to say this, that where qualification is concerned, yes, it's great to be qualified to do things, but some people want to do things because they love doing it. They just have not had the opportunity to do it full scale. So you're not disqualified from appropriating, having that appropriated. That there's no disqualification there in terms of that, because if you love to do it and you have a passion to do it, then, but you don't have any experience doing it, there can still be a place for that and for you to do that. You can do that thing that you love, because it's always better to have people who love doing something versus people who are doing it just to earn a paycheck. So we're preparing now where appropriations is concerned. So what do we suggest that Moors do at this time? And we've already started seeing this across the board, is start writing up a business proposal, or a proposal that talks about what you do and how you do it and what it's for, who it can help, how much it will cost, and the purpose of it, and anything else that you find pertinent in your business proposals. And proposals are done by affidavit as well. And then how much is it going to cost? What's the budget for it? How many people do you need? Do you need, administrative people? And it can be just you. If you're the one that's doing the work and the speaking, and you know what you're doing in terms of, you can relate whatever it is that you're speaking about. You can look in the law and emphasize that this is where this comes in at, because everything that we do has to be tied directly to the law. That's how the Treasury is accessed. Okay, so there has to be a place in the law where what you're doing comes into play. We're in the beginning stages of manifesting all of this. We're preparing, though. Be prepared, and it's going to happen a lot sooner probably than we think, because we're being given every sign, signal, sigil, symptom. We're being given everything to where we can see where things are going. And that's what all the theatrics are about on all of these in the corporate world, those corporate governments. The theatrics is all about the pullback of all things corporate, because corporations were never supposed to be on our land. And and this is a question that came up earlier, if corporations are not on the land, how are the services tributed to the heirs? It's simply a change in the language. It's not a corporation, a dead one. It's a living corpus sanctum. Just like we're not blacks, same faith, we're Moors. So the language must be correct, because our authority, our culture, and everything is guided by language. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And we know who God is. God is us. We are Allah. It says it in the Circle 7. And so those who have resumes, get your resumes ready, because resumes are going to be important where appropriations are concerned, because with each project, and some call them humanitarian projects, some call them the uplifting of fallen humanity, some call it, that's what we say it is. But within each project, number one, there's a place for everyone on this land in the projects and in the appropriations and in the budget that we have. And we use the word budget as a word that means that there's intelligent attribution of funds, of funding. We're in control of our treasury. And so everyone, it's not even a matter of whether we want to or not. Everyone is actually obligated to participate in the uplifting of fallen humanity. And appropriating a budget for what it is that you want to do, even if it's just feeding the hungry, helping those that are homeless to get off the street, if they want to get off the street, and providing services for them in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And it doesn't matter what their nationality is or whether they lack a nationality or not. We still have to help everybody on the land, because that's the model we've been given. The model that we've been given says that no matter who it is, because the estate belongs to us, we must assist on our land, because our heirs need to see that it doesn't matter who it is, we are operating with love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and that no one is excluded from that. Yes, we're the heirs, which is even more responsibility that we have to ensure that all, the subjects, the citizens, the sleeping Moors, and all of that everyone has what they need and what they want. Now, are there layers to that? Yes, there are layers to that. To whom much is given, and that's a biblical thing. That's not a situation where, greedy people take over and take everything. It's not that. To whom much is given, much is required. So those who are doing the work right now, you're in the perfect position where appropriations are concerned to just write up what you're doing in an organized manner. And we don't need it right now in terms of, and I don't know if we should even, I know that we're being told, the ancestors are saying, have everyone to get their resumes ready. Those who are who are familiar with budgets and appropriations, have them to get their programs and projects ready. And we said this about a year ago, and the ancestors said, okay, that's good. That's a good heads up, because as a part of due process, we have to give forewarning. It's not a forewarning. We have to give notification ahead of time. And generally notification comes in 3 weeks. So the ancestors are saying, get your projects written up together, get your humanitarian projects together. If you see a need in your territory, because each of our eyes and ears are open in the territory. So we need to see what is it that our territory needs that's going to help the territory to be more lawful. What is it that's needed in the territory? Do you see a lot of homeless people? Do you see a lot of, because we want to get to the ones that are most needy first. And is that going to include some Moors? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. It absolutely is. So if we want to help our brothers and sisters, we'll help everybody and make it so that all can be assisted. And then as they continue to wake up, they will energetically and by frequency raise their frequency, and then they'll find their place, and they'll go right to assisting all that's being done in the manner that our bloodline and birthright does it, with nobility. So our test is inclusiveness. It's really simple to want to say we are only going to help Moors who need help. That's easy to say. That's easy to say. It's easy to do. However, it's not what our ancestors had in mind when they put everything in place. So we had a model to look at, and all we had to do was look at that model and see that everything was open. Was it all fair all the time? It was not. But that's why we're here. That's why we have to do what we're doing. And everyone who can hear me is a part of that. That's why we have to step forward, and we have stepped forward now, all of us, because it was not fair and equitable. Okay, so that is basically where we are in terms of what we should be looking at going forth, because many have done the demonstrations and, you know, continue to demonstrate, and they're getting to a point where they're saying, okay, we've demonstrated all these things. What do we do now? Start looking at appropriation. Okay, and I want to show you in the Constitution, and actually I think what I'll do is just pull up our Constitution that we've done. So that we can show you where that comes into play, because there's not a territory that I know of that's not looking at the budget piece and the Treasury. And so we're putting it forth now what that looks like. Okay. Let's see. We'll go ahead and put this on the screen. So, what we're looking at on the screen is going to be Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. Clause 7. Here, let me put that on the screen so that you can see where appropriations comes in at and how where appropriations are concerned. Okay. So this is Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. It says, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriation made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. And then right after that, Clause 8 talks about our titles of nobility. So These two are so close together, Clause 7, Clause 8, it's not an accident that titles of nobility is put right after discussion of the Treasury in the Constitution. That's not an accident. The only ones who have the authority to access the Treasury, the head of that project, the head of that program, the head of that business, the head of that organization, must be a Moor. Has to be a Moor. And it's another model for that would be looking at the Convention at Algiers 1906, where the Sultan was going to put police all over the land in order to police the corporations. But see, corporations were never supposed to be here in the first place, but he was going to collect taxes from them in 1906. And he's in that convention, it states that the head of all of the police has to be a Mohammedan Moor, a Moorish American, or a Moor. And he said, yes. Yes, Empress Jatali in the chat, she said, so this is how we regulate costs with appropriation. Yes, absolutely, yes. And this is how we keep track of everything. Okay, so we have some things that have been written up. We've already done an appropriation demonstration here in the territories, which we're excited about, because as soon as we did that demonstration, the ancestors said, okay, this is where you go for that. This is where you go. This is how you access what you're accessing. So, and then we have to do it together, okay? In the appropriations, there's also going to be, and some may not want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's going to protect our brothers and sisters who still are in the churches. There's a piece in appropriations, a portion in there for the Christian Moors, the Moors who relate to Christianity. And then the temples and all that has to do with the Moors, who Islam is the law and not a religion. Appropriations is how we move. When you're talking about things like cellular phones, utilities on a domicile, conveyances, insurance, medical care, and actually for us it's healing, the healing sciences. Those ministries and ministry works. Appropriations is how that happens. That's where you get domiciles and conveyances, and there's no mortgage, no debt pledge. That's where that comes from. It has to be appropriated from the Treasury. In the best interest of the vast estate. So we all know that we're all justices, we're consuls, we're the law, we're the government. So in your consular work, and this is another reason why consular work is so important for all of us to do, because that's how our affairs are governed, is by court action. When you're doing when you're governing your affairs where the court actions are concerned and the courts are concerned and all of that, then the treaty is going to kick in, where it's talking about the domiciles of the consuls and the consuls, residing in certain parts of the vast estate. And you can look back at some of the consular treaties that talk about in particular, the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations that talks about how a consulate and how a consul is supposed to live. And the assistance that is due to a consul, an active, competent consul. That's appropriated. The Vienna Conventions on Consular Relations is an appropriations document. The Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations is an appropriations document. The treaty is an appropriations document. The Constitution is an appropriations document. The law is appropriated, including universal commercial codes. All of that is appropriation. That's why every law has a code number. Just like here, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7, that's a code number. 1, 9, and 7. 19.7, or however that's appropriated. That would be the line item in the budget that we would refer to when we're talking about funding and getting things done on the land. Expenses for a consul comes under appropriation. Per diem, and per diem means per day, by the day. That comes under appropriation. That's how consuls are paid. So when Empress Chitali was talking about what was going on in Ukraine and how they shut off all the banks, and the only way that people can do anything is if they have chosen, some virtual form, and I'm not even going to say the name of the virtual form because it's really not, virtual just means it's not real. It means it's not real. It's not something you can put your hands on. And if you don't have a computer and the internet service is knocked out, how are you going to do commerce? How are you going to go get to the grocery store and get what you need? Not by cryptocurrency. That's, and I'm not knocking cryptocurrency because there are Moors who are doing that. We honor all that the Moors are doing. We don't knock it. Where Moorish sovereign delarium is concerned, you actually have an acceptable exchange method that is lawful and legal constitutionally that can be used. You have those stores of value or units of value. So that, and we're not casting spells and predicting, but if, and again, we plan ahead, Moors are proactive. If something happened and banks went down for a length of time, we could still do business. We could still do business. If you go into the store and the registers don't work, because that's a system too, and generally it's online where the register is reaching up into the cloud and pulling an amount out and putting that amount into their system. If there's a break in that connection, we can still do business because we have delarium. Not only that, our bank accounts are managed either online or offline. And we would encourage all Moors who are using Google Sheets to keep competent records of your bank account where delarium is concerned. We would encourage you to back that up, pull it down and put it onto your computer, or print one out once a week so that you can have backup on what's going on with your account. That is what we're preparing for, so that as things do start back up again in the favor of the Moors, we already have competent records. We have a record-keeping system, and that everything that we do is properly and lawfully appropriated. Now, from the governmental and the state side of it, where let's say the $666 trillion that we put on the public record in 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. I believe it was 2018. Where that is concerned, it is recorded in the Treasury account, and then we're appropriating that down into the different humanitarian areas, okay? So humanitarian areas, the first and foremost humanitarian area is going to be getting everyone properly identified, getting everyone on the land properly identified. The ancestors have shown us the easiest way ever to get banking done where everyone is properly identified. Justice Dawood, do you want to say a little bit about what you put in the chat? I'm not familiar with Signal app, but I know that most phones have Google or Google Drive on it, which automatically means they have Google Sheets on there where they can keep track of their banking information and print it out and keep track of their records, their banking records. And if you're in a place where you can't elaborate on it vocally, just kind of give us a little something in the chat about Signal app, because I'm not sure what that is. I'm not familiar with Signal app.
Islam.
Islam Nobility.
Okay. All that is it's just a wait a minute. Okay. So that's the app for communication. What's going to happen here? We're going to lose all power. So we got to be able to still communicate. This is going to be the last app to go down before the cell phone won't be able to work. And then, like you just said earlier, when it comes back up, we'll be on top where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's based on things that we've all been doing up to now.
That's right.
We actually came in 2 years earlier. We reached the goal 2 years earlier than anticipated, than the rest of those who are watching us do this. We got in there 2 years earlier on banking and everything. Yeah. So and one of the justices put Telegram is also doing the same. So Justice Dawood, I'm with all of that. Let's get as many ways as possible to stay connected to one another. I was just in our kinship chat, my immediate biological kin, my brothers and sisters, all from the same Stargate. And there are 6 brothers and 2 sisters. I have a large tribe. And what we did was everyone put their information in one chat so that they even put like Cash App information in the chat. Cash App, emails, anything that we can keep in contact with each other should something, should there be a switch in the system that causes a disruption of any kind. So with your heirs and your family, your kin, your blood, and then with each other, with all of us, with each other, we need to make sure that we have that in place. And I think everyone has my phone number, but the crazy thing about the phone number is that the carrier was saying that at the end, on March 31st, that if there's not a new phone in place, that it's not going to be able to receive the new signal. So my email is available. I have several of the different emails, one for me personally, and then one for the government email, whereby, we connect with Moors from our official status as government. And, of course, we all are the government. So we're just government talking one to another. So, yeah, Telegram, Signal app, any of those, let's just prepare. It's always going to be better to prepare than to not be prepared. They are, I don't look at it that way, Justice Amos, because I wouldn't say that they're trying to force me to buy anything, because in reality I could go back and pull up a flip phone and it will work. The old phones will work because they were not on that G network in the first place. They were just using regular wireless. So I don't have to, you know, no one can force us to do anything. We have to know that. No one can force us to do anything. There's always a remedy, and the remedy is usually right in our hands. And with regard to that as well, everyone is clear that we're not contracting with any corporation. So those services are going to be them saying that, you know, certain things won't work after the 31st. That doesn't scare me at all. Not at all, because I already know that something is going to work after the 31st. And it's 9 times out of 10 going to be something that was already in place because of the commands that we have put forth on the public record with regard to public services, because yes, even wireless is a public service, and corporations don't have the authority to even be trying to govern that. Public services are prepaid by the Moors. That's what public is really about. That's why people keep talking about the reepublic. They're saying make it public again because the Moors already paid for all of that. Anything that's out here that we're using has a public foundation. We just need to make sure that we can, that we look for and locate that foundation. Am I going to sign up with a corporation for cell phone service? No. No. I'm going to find the public one. Now, where internet is concerned, we did a little bit of a demonstration a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago. Actually, it was about 2 years ago that we did that demonstration, where when you go onto your computer and you're looking for internet service, there's going to be a, you know, where you can see all the networks and like all the people around you, you can see what network they named their internet service. There's always going to be one that says open. Well, the open one is, quote unquote, supposedly unsecured. It's free and it's public. But none of the ones that they thought were secure anyway. And since we're not going to be doing anything unlawful, then it's, you know, from our perspective, it doesn't have to be secure in that manner. Those who need to see it will see it, and those who don't need to see it, trust they will not see it. They will not see what's going on because they can't even see now, and we're not even hiding anything. It's just a matter of the frequency. If they're tuned into a frequency that information is on, and this goes for all of us. When we tune into a certain frequency that some information is on, we're going to get that information. That's how the information is coming to each and every one of us, is by our own frequencies. We're dictating the information that's coming to us. By our energy. If you find that you're looking for something and you can't seem to find it, take a deep breath, step back from it, clear your energy, rest, relax, and then look for it again, and it will come. You'll get the information you need. And if it doesn't open up to you right then it's not time for it to open up for you. It will when it's time. It will when it's time. So, and we're all looking at that. We're all looking at that. Speaking of frequencies, due to the rising of the Earth's frequencies, some are experiencing headaches, pressure, and other manifestations of changing and rising frequencies. I spoke to one of the empresses this week who was having that same thing that I was having. This was about probably 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, about 3 or 4 months ago, I started having headaches. And the ancestor said, and it might have been further back than that, it was right before or right as I started trying to find the nutrients and the minerals that we need I would go out onto the land and try and find some natural something that we could use, and then I came across the sea salt and knowing how to do the sea salt. And if you're having those types of things, even whether you're experiencing symptoms or not, those are healthy symptoms, but there's a way to get rid of them. The natural salty sea minerals, because to call it sea salt is really kind of like, that's almost not the right word, the right language for it. It's actually salty tasting sea minerals. That 1 teaspoon first thing in the morning before you do anything else, take that 1 teaspoon in the morning, and then 1 at night before you do whatever your nighttime routine is. And then if you're having any headaches or anything throughout the day, just take a teaspoon or maybe a half a teaspoon of sea salt at that time with some water, plenty of water, and it will remedy anything that you have going on like that, where the frequencies are concerned. Because what's happening is, and we knew this would happen, we've talked about it on previous calls, the frequency of the earth is rising. And just like if someone took you up in a roller coaster really fast, you would experience some symptoms, some things. That's what's happening right now with all of us. And what causes the headaches and some have what feels like vertigo, others have aches and pains, achy joints and things like that. What causes that is acid in our bodies. Acid in our bodies. Unnatural acid, let me put it that way. And the sea salt will cure that. And I'm using the word cure because everyone knows that salt cures meat, right? So before we had refrigerators, we would just salt the meat and it would stay fresh. Well, that's because it stayed alkaline. And bacteria and diseases and things like that cannot, that are not natural, cannot grow in an alkaline environment. And the sea salt is instant alkalinity for us. In ancient times, the Roman soldiers got their pay in sea salt. It was called salt pay. And the word salary means salt. That's how valuable it was because they were so physically active. And then in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, the military used to give the military members something that they called, quote unquote, saltpeter. Saltpeter. It was just sea salt and it's seawater. That's all it was seawater, salty seawater. And it made it so that they didn't have upset stomachs because they were eating strange food and all of that. Okay. When you see the cover of the Circle 7 where the brother is carrying the empress, the noble is carrying the empress, and she has water dripping from her because she just got pulled out of the sea? Hint, hint. The minerals and things that are in the sea is what we need in order to assist us in the grand rising. So the salts of the Zodiac, I believe, is the name of the book. It is on IV Publications website, and we honor them. And then you can go out on Google and find it, but I'd rather, I would prefer using IV because that's Moors, that's us. When I say us, I mean it's Moors. We're not a part of IV as it were. Disclaimer. We honor them. So the sea salt that you, and most of us have a salty body of water near us, go and get the water and boil it down to the salt and harvest the salt. It takes about an hour and a half to boil just a regular sized boiling pan of seawater. It takes about an hour and a half to boil it down to the salt and then to pour the salt in. That's going to help clarify and clear our mind. Salts of the Zodiac. Let me make sure I'm saying that right too. Let me just make sure. It's called The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. And I'll put a link to one of them in the chat. The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. The fact that it's called the Zodiac should tell us, yes, just as Dawood said, cellular salt. Natural sea salt that we harvest from the sea, the ocean, is going to assist us in the grand rising. We're making our bodies more alkaline so that we can receive the information that we need to receive. And it's going to make it so that we can get off of the foods that are not good for us and move toward things that are more healthy for us. In the last couple of weeks, where fasting is concerned, we have actually been going on sea salt and water fast. And when we're fasting and we are on the sea salt and water fast, if our stomach starts to growl, we take the sea salt and the water, and it's like we ate a meal. The only reason that we even eat food the way we eat food, the way that we do, is because we're trying to replace the natural minerals that we have not been getting in the food. But we can get those in their natural form, and it gets to our cells a lot quicker because it doesn't have to be digested, as it were, from the sea salt. So I was able to fast more often in the last 2 weeks where it was just water and just sea salt than I was in the past, except for the demonstration that I did in the POW. So 8 days of just sea salt and water. A little more than 8 days, actually. It was about 8.5 days. You can make your own sea salt. I make my own. And I don't have any competitors with regard to the sea salt because it belongs to all of us. So Get it from wherever you can get it from. Get it from wherever you can get it from. It's best that we find a body of salty water near us and go there and bring the water and boil it down. That's actually the best way to get it. That is the most optimal way to ensure that what you're getting is what it says it is. Justice Jade asked how much water must be boiled to create 1 pound of sea salt. I would say probably anywhere between 5 to 7 gallons, maybe a little more than that. It takes quite a bit of water to get the salt. It takes quite a bit. However, the more you boil it, yeah, Justice almost says 4 to 5 gallons. Yes, maybe a little more, depending on. It depends on the salinity in the water, because some salt waters are more salty than others. Most of the places where you get the highest concentration of salt in the water, it will say this is a salt water park. So, and you can Google that around you in your territory, and it will say saltwater park. You know, it'll say, oh, you know, Moranian saltwater park or something like that. So it just depends on the salinity in the water, because there's a place that I go to around here that the water tastes salty when I taste it. But when I go home, when I took that water home to boil it, it didn't yield a high yield of salt. But then I went down the way, just a little ways, about 4 or 5 minutes away from that, same body of water, but just further down, and it yielded greatly where salt is concerned. So even if you're not having any symptoms of the grand rising, it doesn't mean that it's not happening to you. And also, all of us could use more alkaline bodies. We need that. We're going to need it as we move forth in the grand rising, because the frequency is going to go up, and anything that's too acidic is going to degrade. There are persons on the earth who are mostly acid, and they're going, just by nature, there will be a degradation in their structure. And that goes back again to the fact that we don't have DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. We don't have that. We have oxyribonucleic acid. Okay? So, yes, I do. The question is, do you chase the teaspoon of salt with water? Most of the time I do. And at this point that I'm at now, I take a tablespoon and put it in my mouth, and then immediately a large cup of water to get it all down. And it dissolves while it's going down. And immediately, if there's anything going on with my stomach, it calms it all down. Because sometimes when you're fasting, the acid in your stomach will start to, the toxins that are in the acid will start to move around, and you can hear it and feel it. And for some people, it will give them a headache. But taking the sea salt, gone. No symptoms at all of anything like that. Any upset stomach, anything that has to do with that, headaches, all of that stuff, muscles that are sore, sea salt, a tablespoon or a teaspoon of sea salt, depending on what you can tolerate, and it's gone instantly almost. It takes probably anywhere from instantly to 15 or 20 minutes for the signal to go from your stomach to your brain to tell you that you're fine. Because it takes 20 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain what's happening. So with that being said, I want to go into, and that's another reason too why sea salt is going to be that's going to be one of our, from this territory, one of our main staples that we get out there. And then any other moors out there, any moors out there who have a saltwater body near you and you feel led, to produce sea salt and to generate sea salt, please do so, because we're going to need a lot of it. There's a place on our land called the Saltwater Flat, and the entire part of that land, people drive on it, and it's salt that was once covered in water. You can literally go there and lick the ground and heal yourself. The Saltwater Flat. And it's miles and miles and miles of it right here on our land. They actually go out there and race on it. So we have everything we need to heal us and to help raise our frequency. And as our frequencies get higher, our tolerance will increase. So then we'll begin to integrate other things into what we're doing, such as different variations of natural sulfur and natural minerals and things like that, to assist us in rising further in our frequency. And before you know it, everybody's looking 25 years old and looking that way forever. and limbs are regenerating and organs are regenerating and eyesight is better. I will say this, that since I've been taking the sea salt and using sulfur products, my eyesight has gotten better. And at first I thought it was getting worse, but it's because I was so accustomed to holding my phone or the books or whatever a certain distance from my eyes, which was actually pretty close. And it started getting blurry until I pulled it back, pulled the books, and like we read dictionaries and books, we're always reading. And when I pulled the books back with those tiny little words, I could see it far back. I was like, okay, so my eyes aren't getting worse, they're actually getting better. I can see farther. So we're moving into that area where the change to our bodies and the change to our minds is manifesting. And for that, I'm just so grateful. I want to show you something that's been happening to us when we would, and we're moving on to another subject, another topic. As we stated at the beginning of the call, as of 2/22/22 that we just passed, that was a milestone for us. All is well with the Moors in the spirit realm. Many of us know that there was a war going on in the spirit realm and in the ethers, and as above, so below, and all of that. All is well. It's peaceful now in the ethers and in the spirit realm, so our spirits can be at peace and be calm. We won. It was a given that we won. We won actually since time immemorial, but we won seriously. And so as above, so below as well. All is well. We can just, all is well on the land. All is well with the chosen state, nation, government, and people. Does that mean we're not going to be tested anymore? Nope. We're going to be tested. We're still going to be tested. We're still going to be in remembering mode. But all is well with all of that. All is well. So we don't have anything to worry about in the back of our minds in terms of the things that we were worried about before. We have a peace in our minds and in our spirits with regard to all that has to do with the Moors. The ancestral protections are in place, and they're with us wherever we go. And so we need not worry. We just need to focus on nation building, keeping our connections to one another, and et cetera. Just one moment. Just one moment. Okay. So I wanted to bring something to our attention. We know that we're not citizens, so we can now see whenever we would go into those fake courts what was really happening. And we can identify what was really happening, and then we can fix it, because the shoe is on the other foot, so to speak, now, where our courts are going to be ministering the law. And we're going to be dealing with citizens sometimes, because our courts are consular. And just like in the treaty, it talks about what will happen, what happens between the Moors and the citizens, and that the consul is to decide those issues on our land. And so we're moving in preparation to that. But this piece right here, the first disclaimer that I want to say about anything that we talk about on these calls is that before any of the law that is presented in this video or far past videos is demonstrated, it is suggested that you first be properly identified on the public record as a Moorish American national. If that is applicable to you in red and all lowercase letters, do that first, please, before you start exercising your right to use a person, and a person is something in all capital letters or in capitis diminutio minima, because the Empire State has those conveyance methods that we can use. Before you try to use those, make sure that you put your status on the public record in red and all lowercase letters first, and then have the fiduciary document accompany everything that you do. Okay, and we'll make that disclaimer about once every 3 months or so, just so that everyone is aware that that has to happen, so that proper identification is placed by you. So I was looking at the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure where our courts are concerned, and some would say, well, why are you looking at that? That's for citizens, because we govern them too. And more importantly, and it's not more importantly, but it's also as important, but more relevant to us, is we need to see what was happening whenever we would go into those fake courts. What were they doing? And what were they using to justify what they were doing? So think about this Title IV from the place of governing justice, okay, so that you can see what was being done whenever we would go in there and we would we would state who we were, and in some cases they would capitalize and put it in black ink in capital letters. Even our appellations, we would see them take that and create a fraudulent facsimile of it and put it on their documents and start acting like they control that and they own it. Well, that's because we had not declared our statehood on the public record in the way that we have now, and had our state issue the proper conveyance methods by which our state is governed. Okay? So then we got that brings up names and parties and proper identification. So I want us to look at this part right here. This is the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and we call it what we want to call it. That's what we call it right there, Federal Rules for Civil Procedure. This is Title 4 at parties. This is what they were doing when they would switch things over and change things over, okay? It says here, real party in interest, designation in general. Designation in general means that's what happens with everybody who comes through there generally, unless there's something that indicates that they are not of a general nature, i.e. special appearance. It says an action must be prosecuted in the name of the real party in interest. The following may sue in their own names without joining the person for whose benefit the action is brought. And again, when you're talking about persons, you're talking about capital letters, or in capitis diminutio minima, which is the first letter capitalized and the other letters in all lowercase letters. A, an executor. B, an administrator. C, a guardian. D, a bailee. E, a trustee of an express trust. So not just any trust, not just a corporate trust, but an express trust. F, a party with whom or in whose name a contract has been made for another's benefit. And G, a party authorized by statute. We put the part about the contract in there, in red. We underlined it in red because that is the exact reason why we've been saying what we've been saying about termination of all corporate contracts, so that when you go anywhere, your Article 3 court is the governing court. And that they don't have a contract that they can tie anyone or anything to and say you're surety for that contract. This is what they were doing. And you cannot be any of those other things, a trustee and all of that. You can't be any of that in those fake courts. You can't. It's impossible in a fake court to be a trustee. So what do? If we're going to those places, we do a court action, which automatically makes us the executor, administrator, trustee, fiduciary, and all of that. And then we get to say what happens with the straw that, and it's not a straw, it's an invligus that we created, that our state creates. That's what the fiduciary document does. It makes it so that we get to tell that what to do. Any benefit that's coming to that invligus, we get to say what it is, what happens with it. Okay? And we're not standing as surety for someone else's straw non-figure war name. So what are we doing? We're bringing peace to the court system by being the court. We're bringing peace to the land by making sure that when we are speaking, we're speaking the law and we're on the land, period. Period. From the beginning, we're on the land. And we don't start out at the sea. We start on the land. And then the creation of the law, however we want to use it, because we created it. We created it, not a court or corporation. Okay? That's why the termination of corporate contract is so important. Now, number 2 says action in the name of the United States for another's use or benefit. When a federal statute so provides, an action for another's use or benefit must be brought in the name of the United States. That is what they were doing the whole time. When we talk about state and statehood and how domiciles and all of that is actually the property of the state, our state, and we're all the state. When we were in our fleet, the dead corporate state was claiming everything, and that's why they kept towing conveyances and all of that, because they were saying this is state property, corporate dead state property, and because there was a contract, there it was. So that's what was being done. And then even if someone went into those corporate courts and said, I'm a more, you actually must state that as the state. So whenever you go into those places, for example, if I were to go and do a court action, another court action, and we've done plenty of them, with regard to any subjects on our land, I would do that as I am the state. I'm the Empire State. This is Morocco, and I'm the state. We are the state. And usually it would be we. It wouldn't be just I am the state. It would be we are the state. Even if I'm standing there seemingly by myself, I'm not by myself because we are the state. Same thing goes for any more. We are the state. All property belongs to the state. So you can't just say that you're a more. You actually have to rebut the claim that a state that is dead owns anything. That has to be properly rebutted. Now, there are some temples, some more science temples and Moorish holy temples of science, and we honor them, who are not under the United States Corporation Company, who have proclaimed their statehood as well, and that is necessary. It's necessary. We're all the temple, and we know that by bloodline and birthright we are. We're grateful for those temples who have known all along that they don't belong under a United States Corporation Company. Because then when going into any venue where the law is being executed, proper law is established so that no one is violated. Okay. It says here, and number 3 is very important, whenever you're looking at any law, code, statute, always make sure you zero in on law number 3, number 9, 11, 13. Not that the others are not important, but those numbers will always be the ones that are going to really speak directly to the things that are a priority, a high priority for us. All law is priority, high priority for us. But we want to make sure that we pay close attention to our own science, because it will be put there. Number 3, joinder of the real party in interest. The court may not dismiss an action for failure to prosecute in the name of the real party in interest until after an objection, a reasonable time has been allowed for the real party in interest to ratify, join, or be substituted into the action. Substituting is what they were doing when they would put a nom de jure in there when we are standing, living right there, speaking. They would substitute and put, because they can't speak directly to us. They have to speak to, they have to use that corporate structure to speak. And some call it subrogation. That's a good word for it, subrogation. And that was to illustrate how it is, how that whole system has been working, and how we are to, now that we are ministering the law, how things are work when we minister the law. Okay. Joinder of the real party of interest. The purpose of the termination of corporate contracts is so that joinder would stop. Unlawful, tacit, and implicit joinder would stop. That had to stop. Termination of all corporate contracts does that. Also, reversion of estate is a part of that as well. Our grantee talks about reversion of estate often, and that is a part of the process as well. Because then not only have you terminated the corporate contracts, but now you're also saying, and the estate is mine. I don't want anything to do with the United States Corporation Company, and in place of, as a rebuttal, not in place of, but as a rebuttal to that, we revert this estate back to the Moors, because we are alive, we're living, we're breathing, and we are the state. So that's where property and things like that come in at. It says, after ratification, joinder, or substitution, the action proceeds as if it had been originally commenced by the real party in interest. What does that mean with regard to the things that have happened thus far and what we can do? Because I'm always looking for ways for us to make the best of and get the most out of the law, even in the codes and statutes, but it's only because the only reason we're looking at this is because we put our proper status on the published record in red and all lowercase letters. We've pronounced our statehood and proclaimed our statehood and all of that. So now, if there was some fraudulent substitution of a court put in place of the creation of the sovereign state, yes, in the chat, is this their example of due process? Yes, it is. It is. Due process is, they have been, anyone who has been in those corporate courts before we put them in subject status has gone through them acting like they don't know that there's a Moor standing there, a living, breathing Moor standing there. They just kept acting on their nom de jure, their war name. They just kept warring against the people, warring against the people. And the people, the people, have to know that when we create our creation that is lawful, the lawful creation in black ink or blue ink or red ink or whatever ink, the purple ink, yellow, orange, doesn't matter, that we determine the status and what happens. So how is this going to help us thus far? If you've ever had anything, any documents or paper, not documents, but any actions taken by a fake fraudulent corporate court, this comes in where the proper identification of the parties is concerned. You can go back to the fraud that happened and put your all caps created by you and by your state in the place of the all caps that they had originally fraudulently put there. And then the proceeding will happen based on the right status. The right status has to take place. So that when you say things about being a Moor and things like that, that those things are honored, that those proclamations and declarations are honored. But that substitution had to take place. Okay? And then we know that those were not even real courts until the Moors step in and say and do the court action language. Then it becomes a real court. But we then become the judge and the executor and the administrator and the beneficiary.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How do we, I'm sorry, peace and love. How do we present that? Because my son is like, Ma, I'm not doing nothing until I see that it's law. How do I prove to him that this is law? You are the law.
You can take any of these things that are on the screen, Empress, and this tells you that someone's been substituting some names and calling themselves something that they're not.
All right.
And they've been calling the Moors something that we're not. So you can take this right here is the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. You can pull them up on the internet. And go to Title 4. And there it is right there. They have him, your son, the identity that they're holding him with is not him.
All right.
It's their creation, not him. He's a sovereign Moor. He's the state. There's your proof. There's your proof.
It says that the Moor is the estate.
So proof that the Moor is the estate. You can look at, there's so many different ways that you can prove that. But I'll tell you this even about that. You can look at the treaty, you can look at the Constitution, you can look at Article 3 and Article 6 of the Constitution. You can look at all of that. But I will say this, Empress, that man knows not by being told. Because even if you show someone, and I'm not saying this is your son, but I'm saying in past experience, even if you show them where it says in the treaty that the consul is to decide all legal matters and lawful matters, rather, on the land, if someone does not have the eyes to see, they still won't see. You can show them all day and they still won't see. They actually have to be, that has to be revealed to them by the Spirit and by their experience. Usually the experience is what teaches them that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
And
when he's ready, when your son is ready, now we're talking about your son, when your son is ready, he will see it. And he's going to see it, and you're not even going to be where he is when he sees it. The ancestors are going to put it in his spirit, and he's going to see it without you saying a word. You'll probably be at home at your domicile asleep or cooking or something like that, and he's minding his business, and he's going to see it. It's going to make complete sense to him. Know that when you release the information to him even one time, that the universe takes that as a tithe, as 10%, and multiplies it. That's called first fruit. That's the law of first fruit. When you put that energy out there with sincerity, the ancestors take it and exponentially multiply it in your favor and in the favor of the more who's hearing it. That's why we only have to say it once or twice. And then they'll get it the rest of the way. They'll do their own research and they'll get it. Because, see, one thing I do know about everyone who's in that situation or who has been in that situation is they look at the situation and they know it's not right, but they can't put their finger on why it's not right. They're only going to see that in the law when it's time for them to see that. But you can give them this right here, too. This says that he was treated as a citizen when he went in there under a name that's not even his. They created that and put it on paper. The Clearfield Doctrine is another that you can quote. The Clearfield Doctrine says that corporations cannot govern. And is the jail that he's in a corporation?
Yeah.
They don't have the authority to govern him. Was the court the quote-unquote court? And I'm saying that in all capital letters and brackets because it's a dead one. Did they have the authority to govern him? No, they didn't. But they did because he did not know that they didn't. So from start to finish, we actually have to take responsibility for our errors and anyone who's locked up. The more that on this land have to take responsibility for that and make sure that we're putting the truth out there and that we're looking and able to point to the truth and say, this is where that comes from, and it should or should not be this way. And that should be made public. That's not something that you hide in an adept chamber. That's something, and I'm not knocking adept chambers. The adept chamber that I went into, I was taken into it in the spirit realm by the ancestors. That was the most prolific and powerful one that I've been a part of. Okay, but that the things that we're talking about need to be known on the public record, out loud in front of everybody, so that all will know. He just didn't know, Empress. He didn't know. But he will know because you put the energy out there. You paid.
Yes, it's just so ironic that you're speaking on something that I wanted to know and that I wanted to be able to explain. But right now it's too much at this moment for me to absorb. I have it, but I haven't heard this enough to be able to give him that power, to which he has the power, and he knows it. The courts, the judges, wanted to put him in a mental institution because he was kicking their butts with the law, the organic law, and they didn't know what to do. And one more thing I would love to give to you, some information. I've sent it to your phone, a picture of the moon.
Okay. Pardon that interruption. So you paid the tithe, Empress, in terms of information, and he's going to get the information that he needs coming from the spirit realm. All we have to do, all of us, is just continue demonstrating our sovereign status, demonstrating who we are, demonstrating and keep it in our spirits and keep talking about it and doing the things that we do in terms of our demonstration. You know, he will get it. He will get it. When it's time for him to get it, he'll get it. Okay. Can you hear me, Empress? Uh-oh. Let me just make sure. Okay. And can you all hear me as well?
Yes.
Islam.
Yes.
Islam.
Islam. Thank you.
Yes.
Islam.
Islam.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So, yes, thank you. So, man knows not by being told, and I have actually had to practice what I'm suggesting now, Empress. I've had to practice this in my own life with my own kin and bloodline. Is I don't talk about Moorish science or anything unless they ask. But that's only because, you know, or if we go into a topic that requires, and all topics do require more science at some point, I try to put it in terms that they can relate to. I try to put it in terms that they can relate, and that's my brothers and sisters who may or may not be awake. But I have, you know, as you all know, I have brothers who are wide awake, and we all woke up at the same time, you know, so we can talk more science all day, you know. Yeah. So this information that's on the screen can be used. There's all types, everywhere that you look, there's going to be something you can use to show that we are the heirs. In fact, anything that has to do with ancient mounds, there are mounds here on our land. You look at the mounds. Okay, you look at the mounds, and no foreigners built those. We did that. We did that. Again, that is on the screen is the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. And what the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure do is they talk about what happens in civil court, or what was supposed to be happening in civil court. But see, what's on the screen, we can now use that and go back and put the creature, not the creature, but the creation of our empire state, which is Morocco, in the place that a foreign nom de jure was in, and then that process has to proceed with our proper status being on the, and everything we're talking about Moors, that case has to be dealt with that way. Now, where we're concerned, and the creatures that the United States Corporation Company created, those creatures and debtors had to be taken off the land. But there's still a case there, a cause of action there. In our case, the cause of action is proper appropriation of sovereign lands. Proper appropriation of sovereign lands, and on our part, an unlawful occupation of sovereign lands on the part of dead corpses. So there is a substitution that has taken place where we're now putting our own Empire State federal person there. And the Empire State and the United States are, and when I say the United States, I mean the original United States before any foreigners came here. We are the original United States. How do we know that? When you look back at what the one that was doing business as King George gave to Benjamin Franklin, was it Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson? I believe it was Thomas Jefferson. The document that King George gave to Thomas Jefferson, it's in all lowercase letters, and he told Thomas Jefferson, you must put United States with at least a capital U and a capital S. That's who you all are. You have a reduction in status. You're not the same as the other. And then he brought that document back from overseas, supposedly overseas, and started operating off of that. And eventually that document became the Declaration of Independence. Eventually it became that, after being marked up and put in that reduction of status by the use of capital letters. So Great Britain puts them in their proper status. And then 1871 happened, and the corporate peace happened. Okay, so this that's on the screen can be used, but we will want to put it in blue, in capitis diminutio minima, put it in blue, in capitis diminutio minima, and then put it forth as applicable to admiralty law. And then we can legally, and I'm using that term, we spell it the way we spell it, so it means what we say it means. So that legally, anything that we had claimed previously that they were saying, you know, we for example, a building that we claim. All buildings belong to us, we know that. But we have to do the proper process legally. And when I say legally again, it's legally according to the way we say legally. We have to use the processes that our ancestors put in place and state that properly so that it is honored lawfully and legally. And the subjects must comply with that. They are commanded to comply with that. They know that. And so everything that has happened to us thus far has been in pursuit of getting us to use the processes that our ancestors put in place. And this is, we're doing this. We're guiding this. We're leading this. We're governing this. And when I say we, all of us, we're governing our own growth and our own rising. But everything that has been going on with us, where state courts and jails and all of that is concerned, is so that we do the study to free ourselves from that and then turn right around and claim and have our claim be law. It's law when it comes out of our mouths. It's law when we think it. Okay, when we speak it, when we put it on our documents. But some have been saying they don't hear what you are, you know, they're acting like they're not listening. Well, there's some process that we have to do in order to make it so that there is no conflict on the land, that there's agreement on the land, but the agreement must be us in our proper status as the sovereign, elevated to our proper status, and subjects doing as commanded. So where buildings are concerned and things like that, for example, we have the building that we emptied out and claimed on First Avenue here. And most of you know the story about that because it's in videos, and we show where, you know, all of that is concerned. We have photos of it and all of that. And when we first went over to the building, there were foreigners in it occupying unlawfully, and they have vacated. They vacated by the time we did our POW demonstration. And that's because that's the commands that we gave, because it's proper claiming of it. So we know we did that part of it correctly. And then the ancestors have, since that time period, the ancestors have been giving us other keys that we need in order to finish that process of proper claiming of it. We know that it needs to be appropriated. The building needs to be appropriated. Okay? And we already have everything else in place. We have the title. We have it's already ours, but it has to be properly appropriated. So the ancestors are giving us the pieces that we need where appropriation is concerned, so that even the system that is ours, that we've uncovered, says that we've properly appropriated the building. Okay? And that's where appropriations come from. And then the Treasury will do what it does where appropriations and the building is concerned. And again, our Treasury is dollarium and gold-backed and lawful money and gold United States dollars. So that process takes time. So when you hear, you know, things, you know, there's a hybrid thing. What happened to the building on First Avenue? What happened to the building on? It's right there waiting to be appropriated to the heirs. It's ours. It's marked properly with international symbols. And anything that we claim properly, Moors, that we appropriate by way of our treasury, it's ours. It's ours. That process is not, we didn't forget overnight. Okay, so we're taking the time to remember and to do it properly, take it step by step. The ancestors have been giving us the access that we need. They said, okay, you did everything right to get them out of there. And there's no one in there, and it's marked vacant. Now we have to appropriate the building. Okay, and that is the part that we're looking at now. The state can appropriate because the state owns all property, and we're the state. We know that. That's why we put the things on the public record that we put on there. And then there was court, quote unquote, well, we did court actions the whole time that we were in there, but there was also a corporate court that was going on outside of where we were, where they were pretending to do things with regard to their creation. So now we're saying, wait a minute, we're the state. We have the all caps name in our authority. We have that already by the fiduciary document. So now we're going to put the all caps that we have, that's ours, in monochrome ink, and it can be black, blue, red, whatever. But that instrument, it's no longer a corpse. It's now a sovereign instrument that we use, the all caps. We can put it there. We can do that if we want to do it. And then the law has to be observed with regard to anything that happened with that building. They never got jurisdiction. And so now we have to go back and we know this is a demonstration that we that we are doing. We're going to demonstrate our sovereign status because that's what we're called to do. So we go back and we say, okay, this is the instrument that is used to determine who had authority over that building that day. We know we did. We know we did. We wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't. And they know it too. But what they are saying is they didn't see anything in in what they look at, which is our system that they're looking in, that said this building is properly appropriated. So a few months back, we talked about GSA, General Services Administration. You can look there for appropriations. You can look there for what they call requests for proposal. All we will be doing is acceptance of whatever is put out there. We just get into, but we have to do it. We can't do it as individuals. We have to do it as the state, because any property coming with that appropriation is state property. So that is the study that we have taken a step back to do. And we want to be sure that we share that with you so that you have an idea of where we're going with all the things that we're doing. Okay? We have a clear vision of where our state needs to go and what we need to do in order to, for all Moors to have the domicile that they want, and for all Moors to have the conveyances that they want. See, the citizens, while we were asleep, the citizens never owned anything. A conveyance, they never owned. That's why it could be taken by a tax. It could be taken by the state at any time. At any time. And at that time, it was a dead corporate state. But now, since we put our proper statehood on the public record, appropriation of a conveyance comes by way of the state. The state still, it's the sovereign ancient state owns all conveyances. And who is the sovereign ancient state? It's the Moors. So even the ones that we see out there on the road now, we own all of those, all of them, all of them. They belong to us. So we needed to put our own financial system in place so that when, like we said at the beginning of this call, if as the corpses are moved off the land and the dead is moved off the land, moved out of the way rather, that we have all the pieces in place in order for commerce to continue smoothly, very smoothly. If you, speaking of commerce and delarium and all that we're doing, the subject doing business that Jerome Powell did, he had to testify. He was called to court, and he had to testify in front of the quote-unquote congressional committee about the state of things. And he began speaking about currency. And the statement that was made was one that where he stated that the U.S. dollar might not be the only world reserve currency, that there might be other currencies that are going to be the reserve currency, and not the U.S. dollar. Well, the one that he was pretending to be over as a court, that one is out of the way. And now it's republic form of government for them, and we are the government, stating what we are doing with regard to the money. The Moors needed an exchange method to do commerce that did not, or rather that originated with us. And we have that now. And so everything, the room is being made. We're moving things aside so that we can use what we've created. Okay. I'm grateful for all the Moors who have sent Delarium out with their affidavits. That was one of the most effective strategies that we could have ever come up with together, is to all start sending out Delarium with our affidavits, because it has absolutely uncovered everything that we need to have uncovered in terms of answers on how to access the estate. That's a major key, major key. Because you can't even talk about appropriations if you don't have your own money system. Because appropriations come from the Treasury, and the Treasury has to be your Treasury if you're appropriating things. And when I say your, I mean you and I. It has to be our Treasury. It can't be some other foreign something, and subjects don't have a Treasury. So things are happening and taking shape, and the strategies that we've used have been brilliantly executed by the Moors in terms of us all speaking with one voice. And I want to send a shout out to the Moorish American Consulate at Japan Territory. They have, and I said this earlier in one of the other calls, I believe, they have sent out over 10,000 notifications with regard to all that we're doing on the land at Japan Territory. And why is that important? That's important because, number one, that's our land too. Number two, if you're geopolitically, Japan is strategic because of its location. So sending out, there's no one in Japan, no one who was doing business in Japan that does not know about the Moorish American Consulate and the Moorish National Republic Federal Government and the Empire State of Morocco. No one who does not know. And that's the case on some of the other lands too. In fact, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows at Earth in terms of those who need to know, who have a need to know, those who those who have a need to know in terms of the subjects and those who are preparing the way for the coming of the Moors. So with that being said, I want to bring up really quickly another part of this that I'd like to call your attention to. Capacity to sue or be sued is determined as follows. Now, this is where Moors can go and use our court to get remedy in lawful money, because we've issued for lawful money. For an individual who is not acting as a representative capacity, okay, by the law of the individual's domicile. What are they saying here? And they're bringing up individuals because we're talking statehood here. Individuals who have a state can do this. Individuals who have a state and who are not acting in a representative capacity. So for all of those who have been saying, I'm the authorized representative of a straw, that will not get you anywhere. Please don't do that. We are the fiduciaries, the state fiduciaries of the creation of the law that is the all-cap conveyance method. You could call it a name. I would spell name differently because, again, we don't have names. We use those instruments so that there's no substitution, as mentioned here, when you're going into something that is called a civil court. It says here, capacity to sue or be sued. Capacity to sue or be sued is determined as follows. Number two, for a corporation by the law which it was organized. That's why, see, the all caps, when we put it on the fiduciary document, that means that it originated with us in our state, and therefore we can sue and be sued, okay, using that instrument. Can't sue the living. You can't sue the living. And anyone who's suing needs to be a part of the state, because then state law governs that. Now, if they're not a part of the Empire State, which all are, all living are, then they're not alive. If they're not at ancient Morocco, they're not living, because that's where everything is. That's where all the living property and all of that is. That's where all of that comes from. Okay. Now, there's a question in the chat that says, how does the 1099A figure in all of this? The 1099As and the OIDs and all of that, those affidavits, because it will be by affidavit that anything is gotten from those things. And why do we say that? Because the ones that put the forms out aren't even there anymore. Ukraine, Afghanistan are examples of them not being there anymore. So you can't use those forms, but you can use affidavits. And what those affidavits will do is they will appropriate, because 1099A, there is a corresponding code or statute with that same number, 1099. Okay? There is a corresponding code or statute with that number. And I'll give you an example of that. So the number is 1099. So you'll want to look at the 10s in any law. So let's look at Section 10 of the Constitution and see if it says anything about appropriation in that manner. See if we can get some appropriation done by looking at Section 10, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. Section 10, Clause 1 says, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, confederation, or grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit. Well, isn't a 1099 a bill of credit? Because you're claiming a credit with a 1099. So you can see where the beginnings of that came from. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. And from that, you can look down through the lower codes and statutes at 99. So possibly USC, there's going to be a USC 1099 somewhere. There's going to be a code with those numbers that will speak directly to how to do that, how to properly state a 1099. Because when you state a 1099, that means you put it in your in your state. Your state is putting the 1099 forth. The state is the only proper and rightful claim to property. So if I were going to do a 1099A affidavit, and let me tell you another reason why it would be affidavit, because if you just say 1099, it's going to put it at abandonment. It's going to put it as an abandoned property. They're always going to pick in their own favor. So we do it as an affidavit, and the word abandonment is nowhere on there. Nowhere on there. We just put 1099 acquisition affidavit. That way it's clear what you're really saying. So that's where the 1099 affidavit, the 1099A affidavit, the 1099 OID affidavit, and all of that come in at, is appropriations. You'll be appropriating that which you put out already. Original issue discount. That means that the taxing authorities can then claim and retrieve that which was put out, that which was tributed. So all you're doing is claiming the credit of your tribute. If you look up the word loan in an older dictionary, a loan is a gift from a sovereign. So if you got a loan in the new economy, not the old debtor one, but the creditor one, then that's a credit to you. All of that you can 1099 affidavit that, all of it. As you're doing the monthly tribute on that loan, you just claim it back. Claim it back. It's a credit. It's not a debit. It's a credit. So with that being said, and we'll look further into that, we're going to continue doing the research and the study on appropriations. And now our job is just to appropriate the things that we need and want. Moors need domicile. That comes by way of appropriation at law. Moors need conveyances. All of our conveyances will belong to the state, and those conveyances will be protected by the state. Therefore, they cannot be taken by foreigners, because you got all the Moors. You've got all the Moors coming with you to protect that which is rightfully ours. Okay, just one moment. So with that being said, are there any other questions or comments about the things that we've discussed? Now, there's a second part to this. It's Rule 18 that I would like to show you really quickly, and then we'll end here. Rule 18. This is important also, because it's talking, remember we did the transfers to minors, the transfers for minors, where we took control of all minors? Well, the all caps name is a minor when it's issued by the sovereign state. It's a minor. And the in capitis diminutio minima, which has one capital letter at the beginning and the rest lowercase letters, that is a ward of the state. In other words, it's a ward of yours, according to your fiduciary document. So that is a method by which you can get something, get access to the estate. Rule 18 says here, a partnership or other unincorporated association with no such capacity under the state law may sue or be sued in its common name to enforce a substantive right existing under the United States Constitution or laws, and the common name, again, is in capitis diminutio minima. It says 28 U.S.C. subsection 754 and 959 govern the capacity of a receiver appointed by a United States court to sue or be sued in a United States court. It says C, minor or incompetent person with a representative. The following representative may sue or defend on behalf of a minor or an incompetent person: a general guardian, a committee, a conservator, or a like fiduciary. Okay? Now, again, for example, I'll just use myself as an example. I am the fiduciary for the incompetent minor that is Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio maxima in all capital letters, as well as in capitis diminutio minima with a capital P and a capital R, and all the rest of the letters lowercase. Okay. Now, Justice Jade asked about the 1099A affidavit. I'm going to assume it was an affidavit that you were asking about. I can put Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio minima or maxima on a 1099A and have it to convey the credit that we're looking at, and have that credit appropriated to that instrument. But proper statehood in red and all lowercase letters must be on the public record in order for that to actually fit into the system. Let me put it that way. So we can use those instruments, and where appropriations is concerned, you don't appropriate to the living. The living, we're the source of everything. You appropriate to those instruments. That's why the termination of corporate contracts was so important, and the statehood document was so important, and to lien the United States Corporation Company's ability to use the dead things they created. That's why that was so important. So we would encourage all Moors to do those 6 things that we've been talking about from day one: name change or appellation change, and change it from all caps to all lowercase letters, because the all caps that was issued on the name change document, it says who it was issued by, and that it's a dead instrument. So what we do is we say, okay, we are in red and all lowercase letters, and then the Empire State comes in and says, okay, we have the authority to capitalize our own property and the minors. And so when you're talking about transfer to minors, the transfer is of the estate that we see, this estate. Now, the spiritual estate has already been transferred to us, the living. So now we're talking property and having property be transferred to those instruments. Now you're talking bank accounts and all of that stuff. That's why it's so easy for us to govern our own bank accounts. That's why. Because we're going to be doing all the transferring of everything to ourselves. No one else has the authority to do it, but we must do it competently. Let's take our time. We have time, and that's why we said what we said at the beginning of the call, and we will end this particular call until next week on Thursday. We will end this call with the fact that we can take a breather and just take the time to look at the things that we need to look at. Okay. Couple of last things here on the screen, talking about the Fiduciary Part C2 without a representative. It says a minor or an incompetent person who does not have a duly appointed representative may sue by a next friend or by a guardian ad litem. So whenever you're talking about a friend of the court, that's what's going on here. It says the court must appoint a guardian ad litem or issue another appropriate order to protect a minor or incompetent person who is unrepresented in an action. When Moors are competent, we present ourselves. Okay? And when you're talking about using the creation of the sovereign state, which is the all caps name, then we're the fiduciary of that. That's what we've been saying. And now we can see that in those state courts, that's what they were using. So now we can take that and use it to our advantage and to get the things that, even in the past, if you were pulled over, okay, and they issued a ticket to the, see, they can't even issue to the living, so they put it in the name of a war name. If that happens and you didn't know at the time that that wasn't you, you can still go back and get redress for that because you're the state. That's where the substitution comes in at. And then it becomes, now we know we're not citizens of the United States Corporation Company, but it becomes a civil action as done by an Article III court because you're the court doing the civil action. And you can award yourself. And what we do is, that's why appropriation is so important, because we have a general value that we can place on the violation. Okay, now we could all very easily put 23 duodecibitrillion onto our actions, but we want to be, and we would do that because we'll do that. But we want to show competence where appropriation is concerned. Because when we're competent at this level, the appropriations are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And to whom much is given, much is required. The appropriation piece was put in place by our ancestors so that we could use it properly, carefully, with good measure. Okay? And some might feel like there's no value I can put on the way they twisted my arm. Well, did you have any contracts with them? So make sure that you put the responsibility for your safety back on the gods. Okay? The gods. We have the ability to secure anything and anyone because we created it all. We want to do things competently, is what I'm saying. Okay? With that being said, are there any other questions, comments, suggestions, etc.?
Islam?
Okay. Yes, Islam.
Yes, so like, would you please give me your email? Because what I want to do is share the 12 cellular thoughts for all our signs. Send it to you so you can share it with the rest of us.
The zodiac, the zodiac salt document?
Right. Every sign has 3 salts.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to share that with you. That's from CMB's book. So then you can just share it with the rest of us.
Sure.
So I just need the email.
My email. That one you can send to. Can you see the chat, Nobility?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to send it to you. And the only reason I'm not saying it out loud is because as you all know, our emails are just, we get a lot of emails. We are thousands of emails behind in terms of, so we have to go through and pick the emails and that are pressing and respond to those. Did you get it, Nobility?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, Nobility. Islam, and we're governing 2 or 3 different emails where information is coming in from the Moors. We appreciate all of the information. We're so grateful for it. Keep it coming. We will get to it. We will get to it, and we need it.
Islam.
Islam, Nobility.
Empress, if we are going after damages, should we send them the dolarium and the amount of the damages with instructions, or just send it to her with our paperwork?
So my suggestion to you would be, whenever you have questions like that, if the ancestors brought the demonstration into the forefront of your mind and gave you the wherewithal to think it through, do it. Do it.
Okay. Islam. Thank you.
Because the thing about the demonstrations, and we're seeing this firsthand, I'm telling you, the thing about the demonstrations that we're all doing is when you have forgotten about the demonstration, it's still active and still working and still doing what it's supposed to do. So later on, the ancestors will bring a demonstration that you did to your remembrance and give you another piece to do something else with it in order to gain further access to the estate. So go ahead and do those demonstrations that you're saying, I wonder if I just go ahead and do this and send that with it. Go ahead and do it. If you're being led in that direction, do it. Because the first authority in a successful demonstration is always going to come from within you. Always going to come from within you. So if you have to ask the question of, should I do that? If it's something that has to do with notification, most likely it will be necessary to do it. That's the ancestral energy and that divine urge saying, try this or do this demonstration. Okay? It cannot harm you. It can only help you. And that goes for all demonstrations where we're being prompted by the ancestors to do it. That's what we're doing. We're demonstrating as led by the Spirit. And the ancestors are so faithful to their word to keep us protected and safe and to make sure that we see the signs and see what to look for and know what to look for. And it doesn't mean that every demonstration is going to turn out the way we saw it in our mind, but it's always going to be for our good. Always. And it's always going to make us sharper, better, faster, stronger. Always. And it's always going to give us more authority. Always. Or help us see that we have more authority than we ever imagined we had. So this is an exercise in learning to listen to our ancient selves speaking to us from the spirit realm, because all of us are ancient spirits, and we're guiding ourselves from the spirit realm. And so we have to learn how to hear ourselves from the spirit realm. They always used to say, quote unquote, what would Jesus do, quote unquote? Well, that question is for you all, for all of us. What would the Savior do? In this situation, what would the Savior do? And then we just look around, we look at the law and see what the law says, and then we say, okay, this is what we're going to do. With that being said, any other questions, comments, or wisdom of any kind? Islam. Thoughts of the zodiac. We as a state, sovereign state, are preparing the salts of the zodiac literally to be used by the heirs, because I'll say this, if our bodies today were as alkaline as they can be, we would literally be traveling between dimensions, planets, stars. We would be levitating. We would be able to lift things up and float things around and disappear and reappear and all of that. Our super strength comes from being more alkaline. And the salts will do that even as we're consuming foods that sometimes are not the best for us. I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I eat things that I know is not the best for me, but the sea salt. I'm developing a life of fasting so that I'll fast a few days or 1 day or 2 days to clean and clear, and then, and take sea salt while I'm fasting and drink lots of water, and then the next couple of days eat some things and enjoy this dimension and this plane, and then fast a couple of more days and go back and forth just to keep my body in a alkaline state, but still enjoying this plane and the things that we've created for ourselves on this in this dimension, because we have to enjoy life. We have to. We should enjoy life. And that's actually something that I'm having to remember how to do, because we've been working and working and working for years, 3, 4 years, 5 years now. Since 2017, nonstop, we've been working. And the ancestors are now saying, okay, keep working, but enjoy the fruits of the estate. Continue gaining access. Continue clearing energies and loving on each other. Yes. Oh, Empress Chitali, yes, we have. There's a question in the chat that says, will there be some type of a payment card for the Delarium? Yes. The answer to that is yes. There will be. There is already. I've shown you all mine and what it looks like. It has my sovereign security number on it with no dashes in it. And it's got a photo of me and our flag and my appellation in red in all lowercase letters. And it says this is a gold-backed instrument. And any vendor that has one of those carbon copy, I forget what you call it, but it's something where you can put a piece of carbon copy over the card, and then you push, it puts pressure on the card and the carbon copy so that the card, the number of the card comes off on the paper, and then the vendors would take that to the bank and cash that and deposit that. And we would autograph it. Remember back in the day when people, before they had electronic credit card machines, they would have that you would put the credit card in this little machine and they would run this metal thing across it to put pressure on the carbon paper. And then we would autograph that, and then they would take that to the bank and deposit those. Many vendors would have a stack of those by the end of the week, and they would deposit them. Well, our cards work with those types of instruments. And then the vendors, the moorishe vendors who are in the buildings, the brick and mortar buildings, can deposit all of those receipts, and then the bank does the rest from there. The bank will, and it's the moorishe bank. It's our bank. It's the bank that we all voted for most of us, those who were on those calls. And you can go back and listen to those votes and those calls. And we're going to keep you posted on everything that has to do with that and how it's progressing. We have where appropriations is concerned, we're working on appropriations for our banking as well. So the ancestors are giving us the keys by which we can manifest that, so that then all of the claims of domiciles and conveyances and buildings and structures and all of that can come through the appropriations piece. And then we won't have to worry about policy enforcers and all of that, because we can also appropriate security. We can appropriate anything that is municipal. We can appropriate that. And it'll be moors that are the heads of that, so that the Constitution is honored and the treaty is honored, etc. So that's the piece that we're working on now. All that we've been working on through these last few years has come to that piece. And that is the piece that we had to show competence, and all of us have been doing this together. This is not something any one of us did. We've all been showing competence in all areas. In all areas. Real estate, conveyances, where inspections and the exchange process and domiciles and repairs and just everything that has to do with maintaining this vast estate. We've all been showing competence in those areas, even where the codes and statutes, the Constitution, the treaty, and the physical maintenance of it is concerned. And so now we're ready to appropriate those things out. Okay. So with that being said, if there's nothing further, yes,
I have
Islam.
something further. It's like you made me think about something. Like when we used to write checks, we would like if I wanted to cash my personal check or something like that, I would put it in the bank. No, or either way it go. Like when my mom was writing checks, the person who she issued the check to issued it to the bank, and then the bank put it on a ledger, and then her checks came back to her. They were mailed back to her for her record, and she, you keep them for 7 years or whatever, and then you. Yes.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes. Oh, Empress, that's analog banking, and that's how our banking will start out.
Yes.
And when the checks got back to her, they were canceled.
Yes, they were canceled, and and it showed that it was received, from the bank, and everything was good. So they didn't need that. They didn't need that check for, to hold on to. They just needed it just to do the transaction, and then she could do what she wanted to do with the check. They mailed it back to her. They didn't need them. Yep. So you made me think about how we did that, and so that even goes with our DeLorean. So that could be the same thing, that if we issue it to somebody, they get the credit for it, and then we get our DeLorean back. Our DeLorean will be mailed back to us, and it'll just show that it's been used or something like that. So so you just maybe think
or they can keep it.
Yeah,
or they can keep it because it'll be on record. And what they were doing with those checks, they were putting them on microfiche and keeping them for a certain number of times. And then they started copying them in on the computer and putting them in batch form using DOS and C++ and all of that. They would make copies of it, and even before microfiche, they were making copies of the checks and putting them in their corporate files. A copy of it, a literal copy of it.
Okay.
And giving the hard copy back. Now, what did they do with those copies that they had where they put it in all the big file cabinets? When the technology came, they uploaded them into the system and electronically, and that made it so that they could get rid of the checks, the paper. But while they were uploading them, and some of us have done this work, while they were uploading them, they had us tallying up how much it was, and then they would put on the public record that their corporation was managing over $6 billion in assets.
Well, yeah, they sure did say stuff like that. Oh my goodness.
Listen, the banking thing is and this whole it's easier than we thought it would be. We just have to keep the record. And we have a million different ways to keep records.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was in high school, right after I got out of high school, I worked at a bank where the checks would come in, and we did what was called clearing the checks. We would run the checks through this machine, and we had to input by hand every check and the amount and the account number and all of that. And the bank would bank that information or upload that information into one big thing. And at the end of the week, they could say, this bank managed, just this week alone, this bank managed, $450 million in checks or however much, And each night, the bank set a goal of how many checks they wanted to come through there. They wanted people spending. They needed people to be out spending. Write a check. Float the check. Let the check float through. And they would cancel the check, but let me tell you what the word cancel means, and then we'll end here, because this is, I love banking. I just love it. It's just, our ancestors are brilliant. Cancel, the word cancel is us giving the corporations the authority to bundle the checks that they took copies of and sell it on the market. That means we can sell it on the stock market. Every check was a bond instrument. That's why every check had a different number. And the corporations would sign them, or sell them, bundle up and sell them as treasuries or securities or negotiable instruments. And they would say, we got the signatures. And it wasn't the check that was the real value. It was the signature on the check. That was the value. So, I mean, we've got this banking thing because it's not really that difficult to understand, and we can implement it and govern our own banking. We just have to be prepared because it's going to be some work, especially in the beginning. It's going to be some work. But after we get everything, and we're starting out on a good pace of proper recording, because that's all banks do is they just record something that's already been done. Okay. So with that being said, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine terror, Islam.
Peace and grand rising.
Peace and grand rising. Grand rising.
Grand rising.
Peace and grand rising. Islam.
Peace and love.
Islam.
Nobility, no doubt.
Islam. Islam, peace and love in the chat. And we will disconnect in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Islam.